But first, we are reaching out to Raquel Dancho, the Conservative Shadow Minister for Industry. She joins us in the foyer of the House of Commons. Ms. Dancho, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, I think it's worthwhile to walk through your logic here, because what your caucus, your leader, what you're asking for are the contracts that the previous Liberal government signed with Stellantis. What are you trying to do here? Understand the terms of that contract, understand the government's ability to actually sue the company? What exactly are you looking for?
Well, just a point of clarification, the minister responsible for these contracts is now the Finance Minister of Canada. And what we're trying to understand is the Liberal government made one of the largest corporate subsidies in Canadian history, $15 billion to Stellantis, which is one of the largest employers in our auto sector, $15 billion to produce electric vehicle batteries. And now just last week we learned the shocking and disappointing news that production at the Stellantis Brampton facility is now moving down to the United States, putting 3,000 Canadian jobs at risk. So what we're asking for is, surely with that $15 billion historic subsidy provided to Stellantis, were there no job guarantees for Canada, for the Canadian-wide job footprint from Stellantis? It would appear not. And so now we have 3,000 families that may not be able to pay their bills, for their mortgage, and ensure their kids have foods in their bellies. Like, this is a very shocking development out of a company that the Canadian taxpayer has provided $15 billion for this electric vehicle battery plant. So it's very disappointing.
Disappointing, but you still have not received the contracts. We know the industry minister says that the documents will be released over to the industry committee, of which you sit on as vice chair. But what if there is no clear guarantee? Is there no more obligation for Stellantis to actually protect these 3,000 jobs in Brampton?
Well, first of all, the contracts will be going to the Government Operations Committee, and they'll be provided in camera, so they won't be publicly available, at least not right away. And Conservatives have been calling for these contracts to be made public for over 2 years now for this very issue. We want to know what was promised or what was not promised to the Canadian taxpayer. Again, $15 billion is not chump change. This is a significant investment. In fact, it works out to $1,000 of federal taxes that each family in Canada, each household in Canada would pay. So $1,000 for each Canadian household is invested in this $15 billion deal. And it would appear that no job guarantees were required for that $15 billion for Canada-wide Stellantis for their footprint. And we're a bit incredulous about it, because that's quite shocking. That is a huge number of taxpayer dollars, and yet no job guarantees. That is a bad deal from the Liberals.
Okay, but again, the documents still have to be reviewed to actually come to that conclusion. But what are you trying to do? Expose the government for what? Having a paper tiger threat? I'm still trying to understand your logic here, because I understand the conclusion you're jumping to, but that's before seeing the documents. What argument are you trying to make by actually getting these documents released?
Ultimately, a $15 billion deal should have guaranteed the Stellantis jobs in Canada. They employ thousands of Canadian auto sector workers. Now we're seeing 3,000 of those jobs at risk. In fact, a significant area of their production in Brampton is going down to Illinois in the United States, alongside a $13 billion commitment from Stellantis into the U.S., not into Canada. $13 billion to enrich thousands of American jobs. Why is it that Canadians are paying the price to subsidize American workers? It shouldn't be the case. So we want to see the contracts to see what kind of deal did the Liberals make for $15 billion. I think taxpayers expect quite a high bar of transparency and deliverables in that deal, and it would appear, based on the production moving to the U.S., based on 3,000 jobs being at risk, that they did not in fact guarantee a Canada-wide job footprint from Stellantis with $15 billion. I find that quite shocking.
Okay, and again, we'll have to see what the documents actually reveal. But how should Ottawa respond to that? At this point, you're waiting for a review of these documents, but we are already hearing from labor groups, from certainly even the Ontario PC government, saying that counter tariffs need to be applied here to send a signal to the U.S. that these trade policies are not acceptable. Does your party support the idea of counter tariffs in this moment in time?
Well, what we're seeing is manufacturing jobs, including in the auto sectors and others, bleeding to the United States at quite a rapid rate. In fact, over $50 billion of Canadian investment has outflowed to the U.S. since the Prime Minister has been in power over the last 7 months. That's a significant capital outflow, and that tells us that the Canadian the Canadian business climate needs to be more competitive. So the Conservatives have put forward quite a comprehensive economic plan. We want to see Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines bill, repealed. We want to see Bill C-48, the tanker ban, repealed. We want to see the emissions cap repealed. We want to see the industrial
vis-a-vis the auto industry,
repealed.
but vis-a-vis
Again,
because this is Stellantis, and the Brampton plant. What about the auto industry? I understand that the bills you're outlining has to do with the oil and gas industry, but what about the auto industry? Do you support a counter tariff?
Right, but the point is that all of these anti-development measures from the Liberals over the last 10 years have made Canada less competitive, and we need more than ever to compete with the United States since we're bleeding manufacturing and auto sector jobs to them. Auto sector specific, we have called for the EV mandate to be completely banned, or to be completely done away with. So you may recall that the electric vehicle mandate from the Liberal government would penalize gas-powered auto producers to the tune of $20,000 per car if they go over the government-imposed quota. So imagine if you're an auto sector worker being hammered by the American tariffs. Would you be making investments in capital in Canada if there was an EV mandate hanging over your head? They've postponed it for 1 year, but it remains in place. So that would be certainly something we can do immediately to provide investment certainty to our auto sector today.
And quickly, what about worker support? What do you advocate to do there?
Again, the auto sector and the broader manufacturing sector are being hammered by high taxation from the Liberal government. They're being hammered by an anti-business environment after 10 years of Liberal government. Mr. Carney came to power 7 months ago promising that he was the one to get a deal with President Trump. He promised by July 21st. That was never delivered. He just went to Washington to negotiate a deal, came home empty-handed, and just days later, Stellantis announces that 3,000 jobs are risk in Brampton, and they're moving their production to the United States. So we are seeing absolutely no deliverables, from this Liberal government or from Prime Minister Carney. We need to fight for our auto workers and get a job, get a jobs plan, and ensure that we have a deal with the United States. He promised that, Michael, and that's not being delivered. It's been 7 months. Canadians deserve results.
Raquel Dancho, thank you for this. Appreciate the time this evening.
Yeah, thank you so much.